Welcome to the Game 5 post-game podcast. The Raptors have beaten the Heat 99-91 and taken a 3-2 series lead and look to close it out on Friday night in Miami. This was a lot better, Gavin, than what happened at the end of Game 4.
Oh, it absolutely was. But I mean, it really is just a difference. The shots fell, which I'm eternally grateful for. Like, I'm really, really glad that they fell. But the Raptors didn't really do a lot different outside of keeping Biyombo in. They just happened to make their shots.
Well, let's start with the shot makers here today. Let's talk about DeMar DeRozan right off the top. He's had I think he had one great game in the Indiana series, and that was obviously critical in a 7-game series. And in this one, this was his big game. I think he came out, he finished with 34 points, 11 for 22, 11 from free throw line, which is a huge, uptick in what he's been doing from the line. But one thing that I noticed that the Raptors did differently in this game was that DeRozan's early offense, and even in that great stretch he had in that second half, all his offense wasn't initiated with him dribbling the ball from the top of the key. It was always him coming off a curl and catching it somewhere around the free throw line and then doing a couple of dribbles and taking a shot. He had a couple of those almost free throw line jumpers that he made, which got him in rhythm. And I think those kind of plays where the offense kind of sets him up rather than forces him to create from nothing is the difference between a DeMar DeRozan horrible game and a DeMar DeRozan acceptable game.
I think it definitely had a lot to do with it, especially this game, because it got him some easy baskets. Like, when you're struggling with your confidence, what you want to get is you do want to get a couple of easy shots, just to, remind you that you can actually put that ball in the basket. And then from there, you could see kind of a difference on his jump shots. They weren't as heavily contested. I don't know if it was because they were getting him better separation or maybe he was just getting up a little bit higher, but those hands didn't seem to be in his face anymore. He was getting clearer looks at the rim later on in the game.
Yeah. And I also think the Heat, given how poorly DeRozan has shot in the series, they've kind of faded off of him. They're not contesting the shots as much as they need to. They're sagging off a little bit. Even for Kyle Lowry, who shot 9 for 25, a lot of his shots were open. And a lot of the high screens, the Miami player went under the screen, almost inviting Lowry to shoot. And it wasn't until late in the game where they actually started coming up on him and contesting some shots. So it's almost like the poor play of both these two players up until this point allowed them to get more open looks, or at least made Miami dare them to shoot more. And in this game, as you said to start the podcast, the shots kind of went in.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Miami kind of defends the way that Toronto does in that they really, really, especially at least against Toronto in this series, they're really walling off the paint. Like, they're going underneath everything. They're really daring the Raptors to shoot from outside. And this time it kind of didn't work out for them. So it's just good that I'm just really glad to see DeRozan making these shots. And hopefully that will kind of carry forward and make the Heat play a little bit more aggressively, play a little bit more honestly against the Raptors going forward.
Yeah, I think the 11 for 11 from the line can't be understated as well. That's an area where he's just been dreadful from this entire postseason, and I think maybe that's an indication that his thumb may be feeling better. I think his confidence is better, and some of those free throws were fairly clutch down the stretch. I think he had to ice the game, so it's good on DeMar DeRozan to bounce back from one of his worst games ever, really, and Game 4, which was under a huge spotlight where he underperformed. Hopefully this gets his confidence rolling a little bit heading into a critical Game 6 in Miami. We'll get to Lowry in a bit, but we got to talk about Bismack Biyombo, who subbing in for JV again, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 blocks. But the stat line doesn't really tell the story because the energy he supplied in that first half where the Raptors built up, I think, a 20-point lead was just immense. I mean, my favorite play was when he blocked Wade and then wagged the finger at him.
That was huge. He was huge all game, and the thing that I loved about it was he was able to switch on to the Heat's perimeter players. They can't be it can't be stated enough how important that is, because it really gives the defense a lot of flexibility. Like, they don't get hung up on screens when he's able to do that. So the fact that he was able to switch on to Wade and force jump shots, switch on to Joe Johnson and force him to give up the ball, I think that was probably the biggest thing that he was able to do for them. It wasn't just his defense around the rim, the fact that he was able to defend on the perimeter as well.
Yeah, and that's almost required in the series because the Heat go to that 5-out lineup pretty frequently. And in overtime, in Game 4, when they went to that lineup, Dwayne Casey hesitated in playing Biyombo, and in this game, he made that mental shift that, I can play Biyombo with these guys. Yeah, my defense is a little different. My offense will be a little different, obviously, but I think overall it's a net positive for the Raptors to have Biyombo in there. And this time, it paid off. In fact, he had Biyombo and Patterson playing together early a lot, and that was... And that was essentially very effective for the Raptors because they had the switchability, they had the rebounding on the court, and because DeMar DeRozan was going well, you also had the offense, and you could afford to get away with it. When that stretch was happening in the first quarter, I was just like, why did we not do this in OT in Miami? But let's leave that aside. But one stat that somebody from I think ESPN dropped on this one was or TNT, I think it was Biyombo leads all players in the playoffs for setting screens that have led to points. This guy is an excellent screen setter of the ball, and a lot of the times today you saw Kyle Lowry actually, was on the wing and somebody else was handling the ball, Corey Joseph, and he sent Biyombo instead of Patterson to go set the screen because he knows that if Biyombo sets it, there's a better chance of the guy getting cleared out.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a big part of DeRozan's quick start too, is he was coming off of Biyombo screens for a lot of those easy baskets. The Raptors centers as a whole do a really, really good job of that. Like, shout out to JV, even though he's hurt, because he does a really good job of that too. And it's probably like the most important part of their offense because they don't really get a lot of easy baskets. So anything that they can do to get separation is obviously really, really important.
Yeah.
I think that that's part of why the small lineups really struggle is just that they don't get that separation off of one-on-one moves. Like, they don't have a guy like James Harden or Steph Curry who's going to shake you off the dribble like that. They need that screen, DeRozan and Lowry do, to get that separation so they can get to the rim.
Yeah. And talking about on the other end, when Miami, what they tried to do is, because Biyombo is such a good rim protector and got so many blocks, certainly deflected so many shots, what they tried to do is kind of similar to what the Raptors did in Game 4, where they tried to move their big man away from the rim. So they engaged Biyombo's man in a lot of pick and roll action, forcing Biyombo to come out and away from the rim. But it away from rebounding position and shot blocking position. And it didn't really have the necessary effect because Patrick Patterson was also having a good defensive game. So having Biyombo and Patterson in there, this might be something that we haven't experimented with a lot, but it seems to be an effective way to deal with the Heat who like to switch and without compromising rebounding for the Raptors.
Yeah, and it's important because I don't think that the Raptors' small lineups, especially with DeRozan and Lowry struggling, are as good as Miami's small lineups. Yeah. Like, it's really important for them to play to their advantages and not worry about not let the Heat dictate what they're going to do. Because when they go with when the Heat go with Joe Johnson at center, going with Patrick Patterson isn't really going to be a good move because Patterson hasn't really shown an ability to guard Joe Johnson on the perimeter, and then when Joe Johnson gets past him, who's going to help out? There's nobody there to do it. So I really think that the Raptors need to keep playing Biz these 38 minutes that he's playing now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that early lead we built up was just pure, home crowd energy, just a lot of aggressiveness on the ball defense. DeMar Carroll, I thought before he got injured, was huge in the first half. I thought he played really well. Corey Joe, again, defensively was very good in the first half, allowed the Raptors to build that lead. The one complaint in the first half is that, Dwayne Casey, after having a lot of success with the Lowry plus bench lineup, went to the DeRozan plus bench lineup to end the second quarter. And I think the Heat and Dragic made like a 10-0 run to end the half. And heading into halftime, a 10-point lead, it didn't seem enough because the Raptors had played so well and given it all back in the last 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, and it was really bad to see, but I think that was really the only misstep that you can really point to for Casey in this game. Like, outside of that, everything that he did was really solid. Going back to Biz was a really good move. Part of it might be because DeRozan was in foul trouble, so it kind of forced Casey's hand a little bit. But going with Lowry to close out the third was a great move.
Yeah.
All of the defensive adjustments that they made, they trap or they defend Dragic really aggressively when Wade's not out there because he's their only playmaker. Yeah. So they're daring Tyler Johnson or Josh Richardson to make plays, and they're just not able to do it. So that's a great adjustment. Having Biyombo, he kind of played like a free safety during the first quarter. Like, he was playing off the ball, he was sniffing out backdoor cuts, he was doing everything. and they don't really care if McRoberts gets a mid-range shot or two. And I think that that's a really good adjustment too, is just placing Biz in the middle of that defense where he belongs.
Yeah, I mean, McRoberts is Miami's way to counter Bismack and move him away from the rim. But you know what? Like, let McRoberts shoot all he wants. Like, he's not going to beat you. Like, even if he makes like 5 jumpers in a row, it's not going to matter in the long run, because like we're going to have our defense set with Biyombo hanging back there. So that move by Spo to bring in McRoberts, like, it doesn't really scare me, even though McRoberts has been effective in like patches here and there. Overall, I think it's not really a factor. I think Miami's small lineup is way more dangerous than having McRoberts in there taking advantage of Biyombo's reluctance to come out.
Yeah, and I think that Casey, like, I'll give Casey, I'm really critical of Casey, but I'll give him credit for learning from his mistakes. Like, he made a mistake in Game 4, and he made it pretty clear that he wasn't going to repeat that in this game, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's like 3 things that come to mind. One is obviously playing Biyombo and Patterson together. Second is, not allowing DeRozan to just run the offense from the top of the key, but setting him up a little bit. And the third is that at the start of the fourth, when the Raptors were kind of struggling to handle the Heat's small lineup, I think there was a lot of miscommunication in how they were defending, and Miami cut that lead even a little closer. I think he called a timeout and kind of settled the guys in, and they came out of the timeout much tighter on defense. So I thought just that timeout he had early in the fourth quarter kind of settled the crew a little bit, and it prevented the snowball effect from having, and Miami ended up basically never taking the lead in this game. And I think that says a lot about Dwayne Casey. Like, he's people say he's a between game adjustment kind of guy, and he made those adjustments in this game. And within the game, you could say that he made one adjustment, is that he learned from his mistake of playing a DeRozan plus bench unit in that second quarter, and didn't repeat it really in the game again.
Yeah, and I do have faith. Like, I can see why he plays the DeRozan and bench lineup. Like, in theory, it can work. It's just that DeRozan just has a little bit too much freedom. Cause like he thinks that he has to take on the role of being the do everything guy when he's in that lineup, and he just needs to trust his teammates a little bit more. And I think that it can work, but Casey has to recognize that DeRozan is going to play like that when he's out there with that unit, and just keep it off the floor.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about DeMar Carroll a little bit, man. I thought he was having quite a strong game. I think his again, he doesn't have the sexy stat line. He got 6 points, 1 for 7 shooting, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, a couple of turnovers. But overall, I thought his defense in the first half, especially on Wade, was pretty good. I think his passing lane defense was pretty good. His ball denial on Wade was pretty good. Overall, he has been a good defender in this series. He's had some big mistakes, like in closeouts in Game 4, but overall, I thought his impact on our wing defense is significant, and you can see what a guy like that brings to the team, and something we were lacking obviously all these years before this.
Yeah, I thought that he had a really good game. He tends to make if he makes a mistake, it's usually a big one. Like when he bites on a Wade pump fake, you kind of remember that.
Yeah.
But you don't really notice like the 6 times that Wade doesn't get the ball because Carroll's done such a good job denying him. So I think a lot of what he brings actually goes a little bit unnoticed. I hope that he is okay, because he's another really big part of what the Raptors did well tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about Dragic, because he got injured when Dragic was underneath him on that drive, and he hurt his right wrist. I think the official thing is X-rays were inconclusive at first, which is never good, and then it was a right wrist contusion, and he would not return. Check Raptors Republic for updates and all that. What did you think of Dragic? He had a couple of plays where, one against Patterson, one against Biyombo, and obviously one against Carroll here, which on Twitter at least were classified as dirty. And when I looked at the replays, there was a sense of the dark arts to his play today.
I thought a lot of it was inadvertent. Like when he was supposed to have thrown an elbow, I think he was just bracing himself for a fall, which I think is just kind of like a reflex thing. I think anybody who's falling the way that he is going to put his arm down. That's just kind of a natural reaction. And the charge that he drew there on Carroll, that's a play that happens all the time. Like that, people do that 4 or 5 times a game.
All right, fair enough.
And I think that it just happened to turn out badly. Yeah. I don't think that it's like, it's not like he's, Andrew Bogut doing that arm yank on a box out or anything like that. Like something where you can clearly see that there's some intent. I think that we get kind of emotional about games, and I think that we try to, like, we tend to ascribe intent where it's not really there. And I think that it's probably one of the cases where we just want to see the Raptors do so well, like do well so badly that we just tend to assume that when something like that happens, it's just somebody trying to sabotage that.
All right, fair enough. So let's stick to the controversial element of this game. Couple of possessions come to mind. One is the Corey Joe foul on Dwayne Wade, where he touched his head and he immediately grabbed his eyes and the refs called a foul. Like, if this game goes to OT and the Raptors lose, that play comes to my mind immediately because it's just not a foul. I mean, Dwayne Wade clearly, embellished or basically exaggerated the contact that was made and grabbed his eye, and I think the NBA should fine him for flopping there. And the second, and the second one was the Kyle Lowry foul on Dwayne Wade when he was going up for that jumper. I saw the replay and I did not see a foul there, and Wade got 2 free throws out of it, like, late in the game. If the Raptors lose this game, we go back to that foul and scrutinize it to death. But, man, that one, I don't really talk about the refs much, man, but Tony Brothers, who called that late, did not make sense to me.
Yeah, with the Wade one, the Lowry one, sorry. If anything, that should have been an offensive foul for the leg kick.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I do think that Lowry got his leg, but that's not his fault. That leg shouldn't have been kicked out there in the first place. But the Corey Joseph foul, I mean, it's really hard to get mad at that when you know that if Lowry had the ball and a defender put a hand on his head like that, Lowry would do the exact same thing.
All right, you're in a rational
and we
mood
would
today,
cheer him
man.
for that.
Oh my God. Okay. No, you're a buzzkill, man.
I just have a hard time. I'm not one of those people who hates flopping. Like, if you can gain a competitive advantage by accentuating contact, you have to do it.
Oh,
like, you're an idiot if you don't do it, really.
Okay. All right, fair enough, man. That's your take. That's Gavin's take. He loves flopping.
Well, I wouldn't say that I love it. It's more like my relationship with flopping is more like Greg Popovich with a 3-point shot. Like, I don't like it, but it's going to help you win, and so you got to do it.
Yeah. Let's stick with Corey Joe, man. He played Wade a lot after Carroll went out. They tried Norm for a bit, but really the primary defender on Wade was Corey Joe, and that's a big ask of the guy, man, because he's smaller than Wade. He's not as bulkier. Wade can elevate really, really well over him. But what did you think of overall of Corey Joe's D on Wade?
I thought it was great. There is nobody on the Raptors that I would rather have guarding a star in crunch time than Corey Joseph. Like, he is technically, like, just almost flawless on defense. The way he jumps over screens, the way he denies off the ball, everything is perfect. And then you know that effort is going to be there as well. Like, I don't really care who it is. Like, if it's Joe Johnson they're going to, I'd rather have Corey Joseph on him, even with the size advantage. Yeah. Like, I don't really care who the player is. If he's not a center or a power forward, just throw Corey Joseph on him.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you give up in height with Corey Joe in these situations, you just make up with smarts, quickness, knowing how to navigate screens, knowing not to bite for pump fakes. I don't think, I mean, other than an occasion here or there, I don't think Corey Joseph has bit on pump fakes and made dumb fouls. It's one thing that he's really good at. He seems to know when to concede the jumper and when to just prevent the drive, and he knows those nuances which you can't really always teach. Like, it almost like he reads the scouting report till death and he follows it to a T. Because when I look at him play defense, I don't find much to complain about at all. And I'm like, even when Dwayne Wade makes a shot, you're like, you know what? That's good defense. Credit to Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if he played more minutes, he would probably be an all-defensive team candidate. Yeah. Like, he really is that good at defense. It's really the thing that makes him worth his contract. Like, his offensive game is really hit or miss, and overall it's nothing special. But that defense makes him worth even more than what his salary is. And I know that a lot of people panned his contract when he signed it, but he has more than earned it, especially in these playoffs.
Yeah. And the other guy that we have to talk about, man, Patrick Patterson, again, 40 minutes. He hasn't been playing, this kind of minutes all season long. So when he was at the 37-minute mark, I remember Joe Johnson kind of blew by him and scored 2, and Dwayne Casey immediately called timeout. And he was gassed at that point. I mean, he was switching all over. The Miami had the 5-out lineup out, and Patterson was all over the map, covering ground, covering Joe Johnson, Dwayne Wade. Luol Deng wasn't playing, but he went on to Richardson. Just all over the map. And I think the fact that he hasn't played high minutes all season long is kind of hurting him right now, because when we get to 35, 36 minutes a game, he's not used to that. So you see that he needs a timeout here or there just to catch his breath so he can go back and be active. But credit to Patrick Patterson, man. In Game 4, Game 5, he has been a tremendous defender. And you know, in 40 minutes, he only had like what? Let me just check. 8 points on 3 of 12 shooting. But the impact, again, on defense is just massive.
Yeah, and he's another guy where it's kind of like Corey in that, like, he just doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. Like, he's just technically proficient. He just knows exactly what he's supposed to do. He follows the scouting report and the game plan to a T. And, like, he struggles a little bit with keeping up with guards on the perimeter in this series. Like, Dwayne Wade blows by him, Joe Johnson blows by him. But even with that, he's still probably the Raptors' third best defender in the series so far.
Yeah, and when you look at this game overall, man, I mean, I know we won only by 8 points, and there were some nervous moments down the stretch, but there were really 2 stretches in this game which allowed the Heat to climb back. One was in that end of the second quarter when Dragic with the DeRozan plus bench lineup made his run, and the second was at the start of the fourth when Miami went 5 out, and the Raptors' defense in that stretch was completely non-existent. They weren't communicating. Richardson hit a bunch of jump shots. You know, some contested as well. So if you control those 2 stretches, the Raptors win this game easily. And the fact that we played pretty much, I'd say, of the 48 minutes, I don't know, like 43 of those minutes were complete performances by the Raptors, and the other 5 were basically Heat just, I don't know, the Heat just were better than us in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've learned about these 2 teams in this series so far is that if Lowry or DeRozan show up, they don't even need both of them. If either one of them shows up, the Raptors can win a game pretty comfortably. Yeah. It's just a matter of if that's going to actually happen. Yeah. Thankfully today we got DeRozan, and so the Raptors got what is for them in the playoffs a pretty comfortable win. So hopefully in Game 6, one of them can pull out a performance to keep us from going to Game 7. Because to be honest with you, I don't want to watch another game of this series.
Not a Game 7 at home with Dwayne Wade on there, man. Anything can happen there. So again, I totally agree, man. I think we don't need our 2 big guys to be great. Like Lowry and DeRozan don't have to be great; they have to be average in order for us to win this series. Because even though Miami has some name players there, you know, they're not playing that well, man. Joe Johnson was 5 for 13. He missed a lot of clean looks. Luol Deng has taken he taken a nosedive after a good game 1, 0 for 8 today. Really, the 2 guys that give us problems are Dragic off the bounce and Dwayne Wade. And I don't think those 2 will win you a playoff series. And this is such a winnable series in front of us that it's a shame if we come back for a Game 7 to Toronto, because in that situation, anything can happen. We got to look to close it out in Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, really, this game is, I guess what I would call like a Dwayne Casey brain fart away from being over right now.
Yeah.
Like if he hadn't gone with a small lineup in Game 4, this series is probably over right now. Yeah. So I'm really confident in the Raptors' ability to get Game 6 on the road, just because they've made it pretty clear that they are the better team, especially with Whiteside out.
I feel like we're in a Pacers situation right now, where you know how the Pacers kind of blew Game 5 in Toronto. They had that lead, they completely blew it, and then they went back to Game 6 to kind of force Game 7. The Raptors are kind of in that situation where they should have really won Game 4 in Miami, and then had to come home to win Game 5 and go back to Miami. It's that hey, we just blew a game and we followed it up with a really good performance. Same thing kind of happening here, but the question is, will they do it 2 in a row? So let's see what happens there, man. What are your overall thoughts on Kyle Lowry right now? We'll talk to some other players briefly, but Kyle Lowry, up 3 late in the game, he hit that big 3 step back. When that ball was in the air, what were you thinking?
I was just thinking, oh no! Like every time that DeRozan or Lowry takes a late game shot in the playoffs, I've just been kind of like, oh, this is not going to be a good situation. This is not going to be a good ending. But he proved me wrong this time. No. I feel bad for doubting him.
I was pretty confident. It just looked good. I think he looked confident. He looked measured. He had hit a couple of similar shots in the second half, not from that range, but he just looked so much more agile and mobile out there that I didn't have a problem with that shot. And it was a clean look. I mean, the defense was actually playing off of him, as I said earlier. I think they were almost tempting him to shoot, and that's a clean look for him. That's a shot that has been made all season long, and it was like he was confident. His step in looked confident. The follow through was good. It was confident, and And then he followed up with that drive to the left and the pull up from the baseline. That was a tougher shot, but he made that one as well. So when we needed it, man, we did kind of go to not iso ball, but relying on our big players to make plays, and they made them. And speaking of iso ball, I didn't notice like too many late shot clock situations in this game for the Raptors, other than that stretch I talked about in the fourth quarter. We kind of went rogue from our offense and panicked a little bit, where DeRozan got a couple of late shot clock situations. I think I think Corey Joe had one. Patrick Patterson had one. Other than that, I thought our offense looked very ball sharing-y. We had 16 assists today, which is a lot for us, really, and compared to only 12 for Miami. So I thought the lessons learned from Game 4, where the offense just looked like in a rut when it counted, was much different today, and you saw a lot of ball sharing.
Yeah, for the Raptors, I mean, there was a lot of movement going on, which is always good to see. Like, they're never going to be at that level that the Spurs and the Warriors are for that kind of thing. But for them, I mean, this was definitely one of the better games that they had for that. The one thing that they still kind of struggle with is they still take way too long to start everything, though.
That's true.
Like there were possessions where completely uncontested going up the floor, but they still wouldn't cross half court until there were 17 seconds left in the shot clock, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like, you want to get into that early offensive action as quickly as you can, just because if it doesn't work, you want to have more time to run something else. Yeah. But they still really, really struggle with that. But outside of that, everything else was it's hard to find anything to complain about.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the Raptors' DNA at this point. They actually take a while to get set up. I think they waste about 3 or 4 more seconds than the Heat do when setting up their play. This also goes to because Dragic is a guy who likes to probe early in the shot clock, whereas Lowry and Corey Joe even are guys that kind of survey the field and take their time a little bit. It's just they're different types of wing players. I think Dragic has a different mentality than Lowry and Corey Joe, and it results in the Raptors using more of a shot clock. So I don't like. Ideally, yeah, you would like to see them get started earlier, but at this point, it's not going to happen, man.
Yeah, no, it's really not. But the irony of it is that, like, when you look at that start for DeRozan, like, that was all coming off of fairly early actions where they weren't letting the defense get set. They were just kind of going into their offense really early and catching them unawares and getting DeRozan free off of screens. And if they did that more often, I think they would just get more easy shots for DeRozan. Yeah. And I think he'd be the one who benefited the most. And that's ironic because he tends to be the one who slows the offense down the most. Yeah. It's almost like he's sabotaging himself when he does that.
But did you see Kyle Lowry at the end of the game with the blood and the cuts on both eyelids?
Oh, you know what? I actually missed that visual.
It's something else. He had like blood on his jersey, a cut everywhere. I think Dwayne Casey commented on his press conference as well. Just some quotes coming out of the post-game press conference, just on the Twitter account. Casey goes, DeRozan and Lowry have carried us the entire season, and not one time do we doubt their ability to score the basketball. Kyle Lowry looks like a boxer, cuts on both eyelids, says Casey. Spoelstra is relishing Game 6. He goes, we love this kind of stuff. And Wade credited the ACC atmosphere and goes, tonight was a great environment to play in. And I think he's looking forward to Game 6. And this is probably where they benefit a little bit more because they're going to be a tough team to close out on their home court. Wade at least has won a title, so a lot of playoff experience there with Luol Deng and Joe Johnson. So it's not going to be easy in Miami, but I think if the Raptors have to mature and go to the next level, that's exactly the kind of game they have to win. I remember when they won the Knicks series way back when, they won Game 5 in New York, and that was a sign of maturation for that team. This one is, Game 6 in Miami, similar circumstance, on the road, odds against you, against an experienced team. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're going to see. This is where we're going to see kind of like how confident Lowry actually is. I think because I think that's what's going to be the biggest thing, is that his confidence is seen to really go up and down as the playoffs go on, and he's trying to put on this front almost that he's not bothered by anything that's happened in the playoffs so far. I think that he's going to have to prove that once and for all in Game 6 because I don't think that they can win that game without him. Yeah, without him playing like a decent game, a Kyle Lowry game. But I really do think that he's going to come through with that.
Yeah. Jason Thompson, man, got the call here off the bench. He's somebody that I kind of wanted to play in the series from Game 2, really, as soon as JV got a little bumped. 10 minutes, 2 points, 3 rebounds, had that massive dunk on the alley-oop, I think it was, or on the putback. Contributed really nicely in the 10 minutes he played. You can see that this guy is a guy you can play in this series because he's a good rebounder. He's mobile enough. He's not as mobile as Patrick Patterson, obviously, but you can leave him on the court. He can sag back. He can come out to defend a little bit. And he's a good rebounder and he's good on the offensive glass. So he's the type of guy that you can use to neutralize, the Heat when they go small and give Patterson a bit of a breather. And if it were critical minutes from Thompson, because without him, Patterson's playing like 48 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why he doesn't play more, to be honest with you, because he has been really good in the limited minutes that he's played since he got to Toronto. Yeah. Like his minutes with Valanciunas toward the end of the season were always great. Like they always got off to a really good start when they had the two of them together. And then the spot minutes that he's played in the playoffs have been solid. I don't know why he doesn't get more. I think that either he or James Johnson need to get regular minutes the rest of the way, just because you can't have Patterson gas at the end of every game. Like you do have to get him an extra, like at least 5 or 6 minutes of rest. So either Patterson or James Johnson, like I don't really care, either Thompson or James Johnson, I don't care which one it is, but one of them has to give him a breather.
Yeah. And I think Bismack Biyombo played 38 minutes and Patterson 40. I think, you got a day's rest between the two games. So I don't know how much it'll affect them. It's game 6 and they've been playing every other day. So I think Jason Thompson's minutes in spelling Patrick Patterson so he's more fresh for the fourth quarter is going to be huge. And credit to Dwayne Casey for calling on Thompson and recognizing this and giving him the minutes. I think he gave these same minutes to Lucas Nogueira in Game 4, and he had a good first half and a poor second half. But this time, Thompson obviously delivered. And I think if you factor in his contribution to the grand scheme of things, it's fairly large because that's what allowed Patterson to stay fresh and get that offensive rebound in the fourth. So it all adds up together, man, once you do some proper coaching.
Yeah, it does. And I'm not really worried about Biyombo's minutes, because Biyombo, it seems like so much of what he does is just based off of effort and adrenaline. Like I think that you could play him 48 minutes if you really wanted to, and I think that he'd probably be okay. Like he just seems like he has that longevity to him. Like I can't recall the last time I ever saw Biyombo look winded. Yeah. Like he just always seems like he has that extra effort to make the big play, but Patterson definitely needs that breather, and that's why I tend to lean towards that's why I don't want Bebe as much as I want Thompson, because Thompson is the one who can spell Patterson, and he's the one who needs it the most.
Yeah. And like the central theme of the series is more about the Heat going small again, and like it was good to see Dwayne Casey not just relent and basically give in to the Heat and say, okay, we're going to play small too. It was nice of him to actually put Biyombo and Patterson in there and kind of forget from just a matchup perspective, but like just from a coaching mentality perspective, like the psyche against Spo, the psychological battle to basically say, you know what, you're going small does not necessarily mean that I have to go small. I can still stay big and I'll impose my will on you. And I think that played out in favor of the Raptors, because what ended up happening is that it was the Heat who couldn't cope with the Raptors rather than the other way around. So staying big when Miami went small was, I think, a psychological move by Dwayne Casey, or am I kind of making too much into it?
No, absolutely not. And actually, this is something that's interesting to see from Casey, because all season long he was, even beyond this season, even in seasons past, he's always been willing to let other teams dictate how he's going to play. Like he would sit Valanciunas every time that the other teams went small, instead of using Valanciunas' size inside to punish the other teams. Yeah. So he was always willing to let other teams dictate how he was going to play, and it seems like he's put a stop to that now. So I always like watching coaches in the playoffs, because when you see them with their backs against the wall, you'll see them do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, and often they'll hit on something that works for them. Like you saw that with Whitman last year against the Raptors, when all of a sudden Otto Porter was a power forward. And the Wizards went on this nice playoff run, and he saved his job, basically. And we're kind of seeing that from Casey right now, where he's doing things that he wouldn't normally do because he doesn't really have much of a choice. And we're seeing his growth as a coach as a result.
Yeah. So Will just joined the podcast, and he was on some other shitty podcast before this, so we're going to not talk about that.
Don't listen to that one
because it's garbage. So Will, man, you were handling the Twitter account for this one. What did you make of it, man? Let's talk about your 3 shout outs that you gave.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about the damn shout outs, man. What can I say? I thought the top 3 players tonight were pretty clear. Lowry was amazing. Even though he didn't necessarily shoot well at the end of the day, he was like 2 of 14 second half at one point, and then he hit those 2 big shots, man. DeMar DeRozan, a much better bounce back performance. Actually, you know what? I was really impressed because, so he hurt his thumb again. I don't know if you guys talked about that already, but he hurt his thumb again and it looked pretty ugly. He twisted it and he was in foul trouble. And then towards the end, I was like, this is the last guy I wanted the free throw line because he's got an injured thumb, but he made all 4 of those clutch free throws, down the stretch.
11 for 11.
Just like he did in game 3, by the way, with 2 key rebounds, and then hitting the free throws then. So, really impressed by DeRozan. You know, I don't think stylistically it was too different of a game from him. It's just a case of shots dropping, but I don't know. That's his game. I'm not really expecting anything more from him at this point. And Bismack, man, he was amazing. I'm waiting for the defensive stats to come out in this game, but he absolutely smothered the Heat at the rim.
Yeah. So hey, who would you rather give a max contract to, Bismack or DeMar?
Bismack.
Oh man, come on.
Definitely Bismack.
Oh God, how quickly.
They're both gonna be future Lakers.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bismack a little bit, man. Let's get your take on it. Let's talk about Dwayne Casey actually. Game 4, okay. I'm guessing you were pretty critical of him, like everybody else, for screwing up basically every chance he got. Gavin and I talked about like how he was better in this game. You agree in some of the things he did?
Some of the macro things, yes. So I think you guys probably pointed out that the Raptors stayed big down the stretch. When Miami went small, that's huge. I thought there were a lot of times where I was skeptical as to whether Casey would pull the plug or not, especially when Bismack wasn't getting offensive rebounds. Joe Johnson got an offensive rebound at one point, which is pathetic considering he's their center, and the Raptors have Bismack and Patrick Patterson, who should be able to control the glass. But I don't know, man. I thought that strategy was solid because at the end of the day, if you're trying to protect the lead, it's very important to be able to take away one key thing on defense, and that's if you have Bismack Biyombo in the game, he's able to protect the hoop for you and take away the rim entirely. You saw Dwayne Wade; he was just not able to finish because Biyombo was there, just terrifying him. Wade, so many possessions, he would stop in his tracks and then toss it back out to Joe Johnson.
That's what
huge.
made Game 4 overtime so maddening is that everybody watching that game saw that element happening, and you saw the shot chart from Game 4 OT where everything Miami got was in the paint. And today you saw Dwayne Wade turn away like multiple times because Biyombo was there, and not just Biyombo, there was just better perimeter defense in general to prevent the Heat from going there. But man, on the other side, when the Heat went 5 out, credit the Raptors for actually driving it a lot because they knew there was no shot blocking in there. Corey Joe's drive comes to mind. DeMar DeRozan had a couple of nice drives. Kyle Lowry had a couple of nice drives. So it was not just one end of stopping the Heat small ball lineup, but it was also punishing them on the other side.
Yeah, and give Casey some credit there too, because one thing the Raptors did when the Heat went small is their pick and roll started being set a little bit higher to give them a little bit more running room to get to the rim, to beat those perimeter defenders. So Casey actually shifted the offense back a little bit to give his players more room, and that's what got them to the rim where there was no protection. So even in game, I think Casey did a pretty good job with his adjustments this time around.
No, I agree. That's a great observation there. It's hard to separate credit from between the coach and between the players, because I'm sure Casey was telling them to attack the basket when they had no rim protector out there. But it's a credit to Joseph for that reverse layup was sweet, very very nice, especially and Jack Armstrong. I had to watch the Raptors broadcast. He made a note saying, yeah, there's no rim protection in there. He's absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought his rotations were pretty solid. I think the only critique I have of Dwayne Casey from this game was, taking a gamble with Lowry on the bench to start the fourth quarter. But I don't know. You need to sneak him some rest.
Yeah, you gotta give him some. Yeah, I wasn't too upset about that. I mean, at least it wasn't the extended rest he gave him at the end of the first half, which bit the Raptors, cut a 20-point lead into 10. I think that was almost mandatory rest because every coach does that. I mean, every coach extends the quarter break at the third quarter to a couple more minutes to give you a breather so he can finish the fourth. So I think you gotta spot him something. He ended up playing 41 minutes. So if he plays that, I mean, he's up to 43, 44, which, that's not doable.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Credit to Casey for bringing Lowry back in the 9-minute mark. I thought that's the exact amount of time.
Yeah, so question to you guys. Let's start with Gavin first, man, because I'm not going to have a chance to do a pre-Game 6 podcast here. So can the Raptors win this game in Miami without DeMar Carroll?
Without DeMar Carroll, I still think that they can do it. They're clearly the better team. It's just a matter of whether or not Lowry or DeRozan shows up. Again, they don't even need both of them. They just need one of them to have a decent game, and it's pretty clear that they're the better team. I think that they'll take it.
Yeah. Will, what do you think? DeMar Carroll, he's been guarding Wade a lot. He's been obviously a very switchable defender for us. You know, when Corey Joe was guarding Dwayne Wade, which you talked about earlier, part of me was like wondering, this is where you would love DeMar DeRozan to have a defensive game and just go, you know what, guys, I got Dwayne Wade. Don't worry about it. Just go do your thing. I'm going to get Dwayne Wade. But instead, we got like Corey Joe, who's like smaller guy, great defender, obviously, guarding Dwayne Wade. It just bugged me a little bit, but whatever. I'll leave that aside. But without DeMar Carroll's excellent perimeter defense and help defense and all that, what do you think of Game 6 without him?
Obviously, it's a big blow. He has been proven to be the most effective defender against Dwayne Wade, but I think, like Gavin said, I think the Raptors can still win. It's going to be much tougher, and the Raptors are going to have a feeling out process early in the game to see who's the most effective defender against Dwayne Wade. And if they decide that it's Corey Joseph, and it's likely going to be Corey Joseph, then it's going to be a little bit difficult to match your rotations because you need Corey Joseph's minutes to come off the bench. Dwayne Wade plays most of his minutes against starters. So you're really hoping for a big performance from Norman Powell. I think that James Johnson, I don't know, maybe as some sort of like super backup option. You just have him ready. Let him know he might actually play tonight. But I mean, it also depends on if Luol Deng's out too, right? Because if Luol Deng is also out, which, that's also possible. He didn't look, he was 0 of 8 tonight, before leaving the game with a fractured wrist.
With poor defense, by the way, I should add. Like, he's not playing good defense at all in this game, yeah.
Yeah, against DeRozan. And DeRozan, I think the Raptors did some nice things. Again, credit to Casey for this. We saw some middle pick and rolls, like deep in the middle of the paint, where obviously defenders are always going to sag back on DeRozan and Bismack. So instead of extending those pick and rolls out, you put those in towards the middle. So either they trap the ball high on DeRozan or, and you can dump off to Bismack. Hopefully he catches in the dunks. Or, if they don't and DeRozan has like a middle open shot in the middle, which he loves those shots. But regardless, if Luol Deng's also out of the game, then the Heat are going to inevitably go smaller, especially in their 5-out units. We saw some tiny, tiny units out there where Dwayne Wade was like, effectively the power forward, along with some very, very short guards. And I think in that situation, you don't miss Carroll's size as much, and you might even want a more mobile defender on the court. That's just quicker because Carroll is still coming off that knee injury.
And they got some big performances from Winslow and Richardson, who were both really non-factors for the series so far. They were 8 for 16 combined. Richardson, they both hit some big shots in the fourth quarter, which got the Heat back in it. So I mean, that's gotta normalize, I hope, in Game 6 a little bit. And on the other side, man, Will, you are the resident Terrence Ross expert. So could you please evaluate his 22 minutes and have 5 points, 2 of 3 shooting, before I give my judgment on the guy?
Terrence Ross taketh, Terrence Ross giveth. And I thought actually his defense was pretty solid. You kind of like Ross's quickness, and ability to play defense, especially against the Heat's bench. I think it was mostly solid. Didn't get back cut nearly as much as he normally does. As long as he stays attentive, he's okay. But then he has plays like the one where he skies for that rebound. It's like right there, no one's contesting for the rebound, and he just like threw it out of bounds like he was blocking it or something. So I think overall Ross had a good game, but as usual, Ross has like 2 or 3 just shacked in the fool type plays.
Yeah, I think his the good thing he does on the court over the series is sometimes overshadowed by the 2 or 3 really just stupid things he's done in this series. I think the Dwayne Wade turnovers that he just hands Dwayne Wade the ball in the backcourt, that's got to stop. Obviously, the one you referenced today, he does some things which basically just color the rest of his good game just pale gray. You know what I mean? It just, the whole thing looks a little shitty just because of that. Gavin, talk to me about Ross.
Well, I love Terrence Ross because he's kind of like he's kind of like an extreme version of everybody on the Raptors, except for maybe Lowry, in that like they all have like their good stretches and their bad stretches. Like we've all seen terrible Bismack Biyombo games. We've all seen Patrick Patterson struggle to make threes for like 6-7 games in a row. A lot of the Raptors are really feast or famine. You're getting a lot of good, you're getting a lot of bad, and Terrence Ross is kind of like the most extreme version of that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I never thought of it that way.
Like he's basically the mascot. Like he's almost like the Raptors mascot, basically. Like he represents everything about this team, except for, again, Kyle Lowry, who's just kind of like that steadying force for them.
I'm telling you, man, I haven't had a problem with Terrence Ross, Will, since like, I don't know, January. Like, I think overall his game has been quite consistent, and I thought today he gave us good minutes. I think defensively he's way better than he was in the regular season. He's very active. He almost forced this one steal, like where he always jumps up on the pick and roll pass when the point guard's passing back out to the big. He's always trying to intercept that pass, which is good. He seems a little more active. Like, he's not getting a lot of steals. He had one steal here, but he could have had like 2 or 3 in his 22 minutes. I don't think you're noticing a lot of blow-bys. You know, like, he's not getting blown by a lot. Overall, I gotta say, this guy's having a pretty good series. He had some, a big shot here as well. He had a big shot. He had a big fourth quarter in Game 4 as well. If you look at his overall body of work in the playoffs, I'd say it's almost better than what it was in the regular season.
I mean, yeah, and especially here in the second round, he has looked really good. Save for the very obvious gaps, and whatever, it's Terrence Ross, he's going to do that. But, I mean, just look at Game 4, man. He was like 4-4 from deep, also got fouled on the three-pointer by Dwayne Wade. He hit all 3 of those free throws. That was an awesome game, in a game where the Raptors really badly needed offense, and they should have won that one. But, yeah, Ross continues to be effective, and he's a great bench player, because he brings a lot of, I don't want to say he brings a lot of variance, but he's like inconsistent in a good way, and I don't know. It's nice to not have to rely on him, because when he's having one of his horrible games, you have a wing depth where you can just bench him, which is something the Raptors never had in previous seasons. Yeah. And so now we get to see more of the good moments of Ross. Yeah. Overall. Like,
heading in, let's talk about Game 6 now to finish this podcast off. Because Will, before you came in, we covered a bunch of topics, so we're not going to rehash that.
You did.
We got to talk about some problems, like your worrying points heading into Game 6. Yeah, there's the Miami crowd and all that. But for me, the guy that really scares me even more than Dwayne Wade is Dragic, because really we haven't had an answer to his drives all series long. I think we've focused so much energy on Dwayne Wade and Joe Johnson that Dragic has kind of almost been the beneficiary of the Raptors paying attention elsewhere. And like in this game, it's not a spectacular game, but he has moments like at that end of that second quarter where he single-handedly brought them back in. He had 13 points here. He's one guy that makes me a little nervous on his home court in Miami. Gavin, my guy is Dragic, and I think we got to see how we can slow this guy down. Whether it be put, a better defender on him, maybe Norman Powell, who's been basically ineffective. I don't know, Terrence Ross is the answer, Corey Joe on him. He's a bit of a problem, at least for me, which I think we have to address. Heading into Game 6, what do you think the Raptors have to worry about the most?
The thing that honestly scares me the most is DeRozan. Because I've long felt that like good DeRozan is just the precursor to bad DeRozan. Like when DeRozan makes some shots, that's just like getting his confidence up, and then he's going to start taking bad shots. So we saw a lot of good DeRozan in Game 5, and that worries me. Like if he goes into Game 6 with his confidence up, thinking that he can hit anything, we might see a lot of bricks from him.
Yeah. Okay, so that's understandable. It will.
I totally agree with your point on Dragic. I think he's their best player. I mean, I know we're all terrified and scared shitless of Dwayne Wade, but look, man, Dwayne Wade was a minus 19 in 34 minutes. He was not productive when he held the ball. Yeah. He was, I don't want to say this in a mean way, but he was like their version of DeRozan.
Yeah.
And Dragic is in many ways their version of Lowry. He does a lot of things behind the scenes. They're dirty things, by the way. We'll get it. I don't know if you guys touched on that.
Yeah,
but
Gavin heavily disagrees with that. He loves dirty players.
Okay, well,
I wouldn't go that
Dwayne Wade
far,
or Dragic in this series, man. Them both.
Okay, great.
I don't know if
I
you
got to
believe
beep
that.
shit now. Great. Okay.
All right. Well, you know what? I want it on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, Dragic is very good. He's driving really fast into sort of that middle of the lane area, and then stopping on a dime, and then either pivoting to find other players and keeping his dribble alive while doing it, or fading away for that jumper, or just like spinning and like pivoting like 4 or 5 more times and then eventually getting the layup. So he's like really terrifying. He's also really good at pushing the pace for Miami. It's very difficult. Like, it's hard to take away all of his game. He's like Lowry in that sense.
And he's left-handed, which throws a curveball at whoever's guarding him. And he has I think he might have like some of the best footwork for a guard in the league. I think he can pivot, he can stop, he can go either direction. He doesn't really travel. I don't think I've seen him call for travel this entire series. And he's just a terror. And Lowry, who likes to gamble a lot and he tends to get burned by Dragic a lot. And you would put Corey Joe on him if you didn't have Dwayne Wade to worry about. He's a guy we haven't solved yet. And I know it feels weird to worry about Goran Dragic for all the people, but heading into Game 6, he's a guy that we have shown that we have problems stopping. I think Dwayne Wade, you can live with a 6 for 14. This is Dwayne Wade's stat line today: 20 points, 7 for 10 from free throws, 6 for 14. I'll live with that. I'll live with Dwayne Wade shooting 42% on 28 points, no problem. I think it's Dragic who's the X factor. And obviously, Joe Johnson, who's been struggling. Hopefully, he doesn't wake up for Game 6. But to me, it's Dragic, man.
Yeah.
And in general, the Heat's small ball lineup. But I think if this game showed Dwayne Casey something, it's that you don't necessarily have to comply with the Heat and just go small yourself. You can stick with Biyombo and be effective. And I think that's the big lesson from Game 5 is that and the Heat will do that in Game 6, when they go small, you got to stick to your guns and take your chances with the lineup that's best suited for you. Don't comply. Enforce your will.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So let's go quick predictions. Let's start with Gavin. Game 6, man.
Game 6, I'm saying Raptors win. Not a blowout, but I think it's going to be a comfortable win. Like I'm thinking like 8 or 9 points.
So that would be
maybe like 99-91 or something like that.
If they do that, this would be the coming of age win for this Raptor group, because closing out a team like Miami, the experienced team like Miami on the road would be something massive, man. Will, what do you think?
Man, I don't know. I think the Raptors are the better team. I'm not sure how much of a home court advantage Miami will get, but Raptors win, man. I'm sorry. Raptors win. I got you keep bleeping me out, but Raptors win, yeah. I
gotta say, yeah. I think I'm gonna pick the Raptors. I think they are the better team. And the one point we made before Will joined is that we don't need great games from Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. We need average games from them, and we need okay games from like average games from the rest of our players. We don't need anybody to be spectacular. We just need them to be the Raptors. The one thing that is concerning me is DeMar Carroll, because it opens up a bit of a hole in our perimeter defense. And, I don't know if Norman Powell can step in and cover that. I think he's been very ineffective in this series because I think his size is coming into play a lot. He gets pushed around by Wade. I think everybody is bigger than him, even though he has a good wingspan. It doesn't seem to matter against some of the more experienced Miami wings. So this potential replacement of Norman Powell for DeMar Carroll, though on paper might look okay, from so far what we've seen over 5 games, it doesn't quite work. Gavin, what do you think?
I think that you're probably right about that, and that's why I'm really thinking that we're going to see James Johnson get his number called, which I am very much in favor of, if only because I like it when he plays for like 5 or 6 minute stretches, because it gives his fans just enough to keep them screaming for him to get more minutes, without him having enough time to do anything that really screws anything up.
Will, we've been expecting James Johnson to play for quite some time now, but it doesn't seem to happen.
It's got to happen sometime.
Yeah, I don't know, man. James Johnson, I still think of it as a break in case of emergency sort of option. Especially since every time I see him play on the court, I'm just like, who is that? And also, how long has it been since he played basketball? He looks rusty. But, he's a viable option, man. And especially because of how versatile he is, with the way the Heat are playing with these like mega small lineups, you theoretically could really make a lot of use out of someone like James Johnson, who's able to move and also, block shots and stuff. It's just, I don't know, man. How many rotations do you really trust him to guard before he gets lost? That's my biggest fear.
Okay, I know we haven't seen James Johnson in a while, but guess what, man? I was watching some feed on the internet for this game, and they didn't cut to commercials in the breaks. They actually stayed with the arena, so I got to see the Raptors warm up and all that, and I got to see James Johnson warm up. And I can tell you, man, the guy did not make a single jumper in his warm-ups. And
so his warm-ups are like his games then.
Like he was trying to like dribble through his legs, and the ball kept hitting his pajamas or whatever he was wearing, and it just kept like dribbling away from it. He had to go get it. And one time it dribbled away, and he kind of asked the ball boy to give him the ball back, and the ball boy kind of ignored him. You know what I mean? Like it's to that level of respect that James Johnson is getting. So I don't have high hopes on him. I do think that if it push came to shove, I think Norman Powell still remains ahead of James Johnson in Dwayne Casey's defensive rotation if it comes down to that. So as much as we would like to see James Johnson contribute and prove that he's still alive, I think it's still going to be Norman Powell, man. What?
It could be. I really hope we see James, though, because I think that Will really touched on it when he said theoretically in describing James Johnson. I think we have to qualify everything that we say that he can do by saying theoretically. Mm-hmm. Like, in theory, he can do a whole bunch of things on the court, and that's what makes him so exciting to watch in my mind. And that's what makes him so dangerous, because how do you game plan for him? Yeah. You can't really game plan for a guy who doesn't like have a consistent, discernible skill set.
I think the most useful thing he can do is be a decoy. Like, put him in the starting lineup and like confuse the Heat and take him out after like 2 minutes. Maybe that'll throw them off. No?
Yeah, these are all insane ideas.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of chaos. Like I'm very much in like the Don Nelson school, where just Steven Jackson at center. Why not? Let's do that.
Yeah, for sure. Throw him out there, man. Confuse him. You never know.
Exactly.
I think was it Jack who was talking about on today's? By the way, I saw like 4 different streams for this game because they keep cutting out. So I was watching the Raptors feed at one point, and Jack Armstrong was like saying how a while back the Raptors actually put 2 guys on the inbounder, which was something novel because you don't see you see guys usually.
Butch Carter.
Was it Butch Carter? Yeah, I think Butch Carter, your buddy, man.
My guy.
By the way, Butch Carter and Will are like best friends.
Just best friends, guys.
Just best friends, yeah. And he put 2 guys on the inbounder, and it resulted in a turnover in Detroit, and the Raptors won the game. So it was something crazy like that, which kind of throws teams off, and give Spo a little dose of KC coaching. Let's see how far that goes. All right, I think we've kind of run out of steam on this podcast. Game 5 is a big win. The Raptors will look to close it out in Game 6. Will, thanks for joining, man. Hopefully, you're not going to betray us again.
No, I will be here for the next podcast.
Okay, great.
For Game 5. I'll be speaking with you, Zarar.
Okay, great. And Gavin, man, thanks for joining on short notice.
No problem.
Listener, most of all, thank you and congratulations on a very spectacular Game 5 win. Hopefully the Raptors close this series out in Miami in Game 6, and it'll be the equivalent of the Game 5 win in New York, which I'm sure some of our older fans remember. It's still etched in my memory with the Alvin Williams jumper, which kind of pushed the Raptors on to the next round. If they win this one, this obviously is going to be much bigger, and we're going to await the Cavs, hopefully, on Sunday. It's a 3:30 p.m. tip-off, I think it is. Either way, if it's Game 7 or Game 1 with Cleveland, they're both at Sunday at 3:30, is it, Will?
Yep, 3:30.
That sounds good. Listener, thanks again. Rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and if you want to support Raptors Republic, go to patreon.com/Raptors Republic. Until Game 6 post-game podcast, goodbye.